All right. Y'all ready for session 2? Okay. The question that I'm going to start, Father Daniel just asked you a question right there, and I'm going to ask you another question. In our first session, we spoke about God as our Father. And everything we spoke about sounded very nice. Okay, and how God is a close Father, and God is a competent Father, and God is a caring Father. And all these things that we talked about God make him sound like someone that would be great to get to know, right? Well, my question to you is, if God is so great, and God is so caring, and God is so loving, and God is so merciful and gracious and kind, all those things that we say, how come more people don't believe in him? You ever thought about that? Actually, I'll take that. Thank you. How come more people don't believe in God? Thank you, Mark. Everything we just said about God makes it a no-brainer. Everything that we say about God makes it a no-brainer whether or not to have a relationship with him or not. He's there for when you need him. He cares about you. He's able. Like everything we said is that God is able and God is willing. So why is it that more people don't believe in God? Why is it so many people that go around and say, I don't believe in the existence of God? Or why is it so many people that say, I believe in God, but I don't want to have anything to do with God? Well, I believe the answer to that question is our topic for tonight. And I didn't even know that Sandra was going to say what she said, but she actually gave me the perfect intro. Because what Sandra said earlier, if you were paying attention, is she said that she prayed for something, and she didn't get what she wanted. And when she didn't get what she wanted, she instantly turned and said, why, God? Our topic here that we're going to talk about tonight is why God hasn't answered my prayer. And it's a topic that, I'll be honest, I don't want to talk about. I don't like to talk about. If you ask me, as a priest, what is my least favorite topic in the world, this would probably be it. Because you hate it. You hate it when you pray and you don't get what you want. But let me tell you what I hate. When I tell you to pray, and I tell you trust in prayer, and trust in God, and do the right thing, and offer your prayers in faith, and then you don't get what you wanted. And you get a big fat no from God to your prayer. I'm telling you, for me, I bet you the other priests say the same thing. This is heartbreaking for me. This is the worst part of the job. This is the worst part of the job. Worst part of the job is when someone listens to you, trusts in God, does the right thing, and sorry to say, God lets them down. I don't know if anyone who follows me on my blog or my church or Twitter knows that recently, okay, I've been talking a lot about a movie in the movie theaters. Okay, it's called The War Room. How many people have seen the movie The War Room? Oh, the rest of you, what are you doing? Forget about Annie, okay? Go see this movie The War Room and then go see Annie, okay? Make it a double header, okay? Take your wife out for a date, okay? Not everything has to be in front of the TV. Like, go out and do something fun, okay? Go watch this movie, The War Room. I saw this movie, The War Room, and it changed my life. And it changed my life so much that I did a series on it. Okay, there's not been a movie, I won't give it away, I thought more of you may have seen it. There hadn't been a movie that affected my prayer life, or there hadn't been anything that affected my prayer life more than this movie. Okay, so I really want everyone to see it. In the movie, without giving it away, basically there's a lady who's going through a hard time, and she prays. And it's all about the power of prayer. And in the movie, somehow, magically, her prayer gets answered, and the whole story, her life gets turned around 180 degrees, and within a matter of an hour and 45 minutes, she goes from very negative to very positive. Okay, the movie wraps up very nicely. And it's a beautiful story. But the bottom line is, as beautiful as the story is, the reality is most of us don't get our prayers answered in an hour and 45 minutes. Most of us don't get our prayers answered in a 2-week period. Most of us, I bet you if I took a survey right now, that every single person in this room here tonight can say one thing that they have prayed for or are praying for that they've gotten a no to. And if you haven't, if there's somebody right now who could say anything I've ever prayed for, I've gotten exactly when I wanted, how I wanted, you come here and you give this talk instead of me. the reality is we don't always get our prayers answered. For me, I wish that I'm okay with God not answering every prayer. Meaning answering with a yes. He always answers, but sometimes the answer is no. Okay? But I mean answering with a yes. I'm okay. But all I need from God, just tell me what makes prayers answer or not make prayers answer. Like, just give me a formula. Like, I would be okay if God said, okay, I'm not going to answer every prayer yes, but I will if they meet these criteria. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And if you do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like, we like objectivity. We like standards. We like to go into the class and know exactly how we're going to be graded. We don't like it that this person prayed and their prayer was answered. I do the exact same thing they did and my prayer is a no. And then someone does even less than both of us and they get a yes. We don't like that. It bothers us. Just give me a formula. Like, if God said, okay, here's the formula for prayer. You have to go to church every Sunday. You have to make sure that you pray the Igbeya. You have to make sure that you fast on these certain days. If God just gave us a formula, or if He gave us a negative formula, He's saying, you know what? I don't answer prayers of people who don't go to church on Sunday. Okay, fine. I don't answer prayers of people who don't help old ladies across the street. Okay, fine. I don't answer prayers of people who commit the greatest sin, like fall asleep during a priest's sermon. Yeah, I agree. Don't answer their prayers, ever. Okay? That I agree with. That makes sense. But the problem lies in that God seems kind of haphazard, doesn't He? Like, some people's prayers get a yes, other people's prayers get a no. Some people get what they want, and their life is just so great, and we hate them. And other people struggle and strive, they get nothing. This is the reason why, like Sandra said, this is the reason why my experience says that 9 out of 10 times when you meet someone who says, I don't believe in God, I'm an atheist, it is not a theological reason. And you are wasting your time trying to convince them of the existence of God scientifically or theologically or biblically. Look, that stuff's all great. That's not why people don't believe. Because anyone who wants to think objectively, it doesn't take much to figure out that this stuff, just like I don't think this building put itself together, I don't think the earth put itself together. I don't think the soul. So it doesn't take much to believe in God. The majority of people who don't believe in God, at least my experience, I can't say about the world, my experience is actually 100%, is because they prayed and they didn't get what they wanted in prayer. So how can I believe in a God who didn't answer prayer? Like, I wasn't praying for anything bad, I was just praying for my sick dad. If God loved me, why would I be an orphan? I can't believe in that God. So therefore, God doesn't exist. How can I believe in a God who let my dad abuse me like that and just watched me get abused as a child? You say there's a God? Okay, that works for you. But sister, ain't no God in my life. At least not a God that I want to have anything to do with. So my question to you, how do you answer someone who asks you why God doesn't answer prayer? How do you answer? How do you answer in your own life? How do you answer in other people's lives? I'm telling you the importance of this question. If you don't understand the answer and you can't figure it out, I'm telling you there's going to come a point in time, inevitably, where you pray for something big and you get a no. And if you don't know how to respond to that, you're going to be in trouble. I'm telling you from my own experience, what do you do when you see a husband whose pregnant wife was in a car accident and he's praying and praying and praying and praying, and God says no, and the pregnant wife doesn't make it out? What do you say? What do you say to the mom whose son is lost and is away from God and refuses to acknowledge that God even exists? And she cries every single day for her son. What do you say? Why God says no? You really want me to break your heart? You really want me to tell you where my heart gets broken? What do you do to the kid, the 8-year-old kid who cries every night and says, I just want daddy to come home? I don't know why daddy has to live over there and mom has to live over here. I just want my daddy to come back. What are you going to say? That's real life. That's real life. First thing we're going to say If you've ever been in a situation where God has not answered your prayer the way you wanted, first thing I'll say is you're in good company. Because I'll show you two guys who are pretty good guys who didn't always get yeses. Job chapter 30, verse 20, and King David wrote in Psalm 22. Job says, I cry out to you, but you do not answer me. King David says something similar. He said, oh my God, in the daytime, I cry in the daytime, but you do not hear. Now, just in case you are automatically thinking that good people get their prayers answered, bad people get no's. That's automatically what we think. I would get a yes if I was good, and because I got a no, I must be bad. Job was a pretty good guy. Job from the mouth of God. What did God say about Job? God said something about Job he ain't said about anyone else on this planet. He said, my servant Job, have you considered him? There is none righteous like Job, my servant on this earth. That's what God said. No one more righteous than Job. And Job said, okay, God, if I'm so righteous, here's what I'm asking for. And God said, Job, you're the best. You know. Same thing with David. There wasn't anyone like David on this earth. But David knew, just like us, what it's like to get a yes. He also knew what it's like to get a no. So first thing is realize you're in good shape. You're in good company, I should say. You're in good company if you've gotten a no. You're not the only one. You think you're the only one. The temptation is to think that I'm the only one who hasn't gotten this problem solved. That's the temptation, but that's not the reality. The reality is all of us have been there and all of us are in the same boat. Now the first thing I'm going to say, and I'm just going to talk about this for 1 minute, and I don't really want, this is not my focus for tonight, but I can't move on without addressing this. As I said before, if you're good, you get prayers, yes, and if you're bad, you get a no. And I said that's not the way it is. That's true, but it's not 100% true. Meaning, there are certain factors that if you choose certain ways of behavior, of lifestyle, that God will not answer your prayers no matter what else. Okay? And I'm doing this series now, it's called Into the War Room, and I'm talking about this. I did an entire message, okay, on the factors that we need to have in our lives that matter for God to say yes. That's not saying that if we do these factors, that God will always give us what we want, but it's if we don't do them, then God will not give us what we want. Does that make sense? Let me give you an example. I cannot live in sin with my boyfriend or girlfriend and then ask God to bless our marriage. That's not how it works. I can't be breaking all of God's rules and say, God, please help us not to fight. That's not how it works. You've already negated your ability to receive a yes because you broke the commandments. I cannot pray, God, forgive me, if I am holding grudge against my brother or my sister. You can't do that. I cannot, this is the example that I've given, and forgive me if it's very direct, I can't ask for a great blessing on Sunday morning if I'm going out and getting drunk on Saturday night. You can pray as hard as you want on Sunday morning. If you spend a Saturday night going out and getting drunk, I don't care how much you pray on Sunday. So for certain, our behavior, our lifestyle has an effect on getting our prayers answered, for certain. But let's agree there are times when we're doing everything right and we still get a no. That's what I'm talking about here for this session. But I'm not negating all that. That's an own important topic. But my assumption is tonight, what I'm talking about is when we're doing everything right, when we are helping old ladies across the street, when we are going to church on Sunday, when we are fighting to be pure, not only we're not sleeping in sermons, we are taking notes in sermons. Like we are doing it the right way. When those situations come, and we get a no, and we're doing everything right, how do we respond to that? In case that example isn't clear in your mind, I'll give you an example from my own experience, okay, and I think I spoke about this at the retreat about how now I'm at the time as a parent, like my kid is at the age where he wants a cell phone, okay, because who is 10 and doesn't have a cell phone these days, okay? So he wants a cell phone, and he wants a cell phone. I'm not going to give him a cell phone, okay? You may get cell phones to your kids. I don't want my kid at age 10 to have a cell phone. I can't think of anything good that can come from a child having that much access to everything in the whole wide world that's bad, okay? I can't think of anything that's good from them. I'm not telling you you're a bad parent, you're a different parent. This is what I do for my kid. No matter how much my kid does good in school, I'm not going to give him a cell phone. No matter how much my kid cleans the room, I'm not going to give him a cell phone. Like nothing he can do, if I think this is bad for him, I'm not going to get it for him. No matter what good he does. But with that said, if I did decide I wanted to give him and he doesn't get good grades in school, that will make him get a no. Does that make sense? So the good grades don't ensure a yes, but the bad grades ensure a no. Is that clear? So what I'm talking about now is when I'm doing it right. I'm living a righteous lifestyle. Like I'm trying my best. And then I get a no. That's what I'm talking about. But if you aren't struggling for a righteous life, nothing I say applies to you. How do we deal with those no's? How do we deal when God doesn't answer our prayers? What's our response? I'm going to give you one big idea, okay, one kind of key thought, and then I'm going to break it down with some bullets here. Here's the key thought. And if you're taking notes, I would write this one down. And I would write it down in my heart more than I write it down on a piece of paper. But this is what I'm trying to say. Truth. We need to put our trust in the giver, not in the gift. We need to put our trust in the giver, not in the gift. This is a paradigm shift from how we normally think. Because most of us think in terms of gifts, not in terms of giver. What do I mean? I mean that when it comes to prayer, most of us think in terms of stuff we want from God. I want healing for my father. I want blessing for my children. I want God to give me a spouse. I want God to get my spouse away from me. Okay? We think in terms of stuff that we want. Give me this, give me that, take this, take that. We think in terms of gifts. A person came to me recently. Like I said, I'm doing this series on the war room, and it's all about prayer. And I'm talking about the power of prayer and the power of prayer, the power of prayer. A person came to me in my church in the middle of this series and said, you know what, Father Anthony? You're talking all this about prayer. I have been praying for this situation for years, and God hasn't given it to me. And I did everything you said. I forgave whoever, and I'm trying to live a good life, and I'm doing everything right, and I'm believing, and I did everything that you asked me. I've been praying for years for this situation, and God hasn't answered it. I said, okay, let me ask you a question. I asked this lady, how's your marriage doing? I know you struggled in your marriage for a while. How's your marriage doing? She said, oh, it's doing great. God's never blessed us more. Okay. How are your kids doing? Oh, let me tell you how God is really working in my kids' lives these days. Okay, how's work going? She's saying, let me tell you how I'm doing great at work, and I really feel the presence of God in work. So I said, lady, you telling me that God is working in this way, in this way, in this way, in this way, and I have 15 ways that you can see God working in your life. But because He hasn't given you this one thing, you're upset? What is your focus on? Is it on the giver or is it on the gift? 15 ways the giver showed you, I am active in your life. I am working in your life. I am blessing your life. But I'm not going to give you this one thing. You complain or don't complain? Your focus is the giver or your focus is the gift? Back to me. I just told you I don't give my kid a cell phone. And I explained to you the reason why. Now, you know me. Maybe you don't know me very well, but you know me at least at some level, you know, from listening to me or whatever. How many of you, knowing me and how much I talk about my kids, how much I love my kids, how many of you, if I say, I am not giving my child a cell phone, how many of you are thinking in your hearts, oh, you know what? He just doesn't love him. Anyone? If my son were to come to you and say, you know what? My dad is mean. He doesn't love me. Why? Because he doesn't give me a cell phone. Y'all are laughing. What would you say? Would you say, oh, you're right. Yeah, he is mean. You're 10 and you don't have a cell phone? You wouldn't say that. What would you say? What would you say? No, let's be interactive here. Help me out. What would you say? What are you thinking right now? My son comes to you and says, my dad hates me. He won't give me a cell phone. What do you say? How do you respond? How do you explain that? Huh? He must have a reason. He doesn't think a cell phone is good for you. That's what we would naturally say, correct? None of us would think anything different than that, especially if you're a parent. You hear that I don't give my kid a cell phone, you naturally think, oh, there must be a reason. He must think that's not good for him. Well, how come when it comes to God, we don't say that? How come when it comes to me, a flawed individual, a parent with all kinds of mistakes, you automatically assume I love my child, but I have a better reason. But when it comes to God, and He doesn't give it to us, He's a bad dad. Or He doesn't know what He's doing. Or He has no common sense. And doesn't He know that we need this? You give me the benefit of the doubt all the time. You give yourself the benefit of the doubt all the time. When it comes to God, God is mean. God doesn't love. God doesn't care. God doesn't love. If you trust me as a dad, And I got all kinds of problems. But you didn't flinch. You didn't doubt my love for my kid for 1 second. But how come we doubt God's love when he doesn't give us what we want? Why do we make him out to be an incompetent, unloving, uncaring dad? You know why we like gifts better than giver? We put our trust in gifts. We like gifts, not giver. You know why? Because who are we really putting our trust in when we put our trust in gifts? Who are we really trusting? Ourselves. We're putting our trust in ourselves. That I know what's best. And I know what's right. And I know what's good for me. And I know what's going to make me happy. And it's me, and it's me, and it's me, and it's me. With my kid, he didn't get this. You assume he doesn't know what's best. Dad knows what's best for him. When it comes to me, Dad has no idea what he's doing. Doesn't Dad know? Doesn't God know I should be married by now? I made it clear to him. Doesn't he know the timeline? Doesn't God know this problem should be solved by now? Doesn't God know I should have kids by now? Doesn't God know this should have been healed? Like, it's hard to get help these days. Just to show you, ask yourself this question. To show you if you're putting your trust in the gift versus the giver. How many of you have ever said in your heart or out loud with your mouth, if God would just listen to me, the world would be a better place? If God would just listen to me, my life would be a lot better. Y'all remember, since we're on movies, since it's movie theme night, Bruce Almighty. Who's seen the movie Bruce Almighty? Okay, very good. Okay, movie Bruce Almighty. Oh, the Christian movie no one's seen, but Bruce Almighty everyone's seen, okay? Very good. You're raising great children here, okay? That's great, okay? Very good. Bruce Almighty was quite possibly the dumbest premise for a movie in the history of all the world. Somehow Jim Carrey became God in Buffalo. But he was like just God over Buffalo. I don't know how. And Morgan Freeman somehow like lent him out the role. I don't know exactly how it works. In the movie, there's a scene. Okay, it basically, somehow Jim Carrey thought, basically like we all think, that I would do a better job of being God than God. Like God is not doing a very good job, I would do a better job. So he somehow is God for a week or whatever it is. And in the movie, there's a scene, I don't know if you remember it, where like he has to answer prayers. And the prayers come to him on like emails. So like he would go and check the emails and it'd be like, pray for no rain on this day for my wedding. He'd be like, yes, you know what I mean? And this person would ask for it and he'd say, no, you know what I mean? And he would just respond to all the emails. And the whole point of that little scene in the movie was that he destroyed the whole world. Okay, because like he made it no rain and then all the crops died, or I don't know what it was. I can't really remember. But the premise of it is that if we're honest, we think we'd be pretty good at playing God. And we think if I could be God over my life, things would be great. But you know what? I just have to put up with God's incompetence. Because God doesn't know what he's doing. God doesn't have any common sense. Anytime God doesn't answer our prayers, I believe the root of that is one of three things. This idea of trusting the giver versus the gift. Three things. I'm going to tell you three things that you need to, if you struggle with this is something to write down. This is something to tweet out. This is something to tweet out. Who cares about tweet out? Only put it in a tweet if it's something that I'm trying to put it in my heart. This is something to hold on to. I'm going to tell you three things that you must hold on to these three things. Because there's going to come a point in time in your life where I promise you, you're going to face that challenge of not getting what you want in prayer. And if you do not have these three things to fall back on, you'll be in trouble. Every unanswered prayer finds its root in one of the next three things I'm going to talk about. I'll give you the overview, then I'll break it down. Every time, it's either A, God has a bigger perspective, B, God has a better plan, or C, God has a greater purpose. Let's break those down one by one. First, God has a bigger perspective. God has a bigger perspective. Because I see today, God sees forever. I see today, God sees forever. Since we're on the Jim Carrey, Bruce Almighty thing, let me ask you another hypothetical question. What would your life look like? Would your life be any different? What would your life look like if you knew the outcome of every decision you would make before you made it? What would your life look like? Would it look the same? If you knew how your boss was going to respond to your email before you sent it. If you knew whether she would say yes or no before you asked her out. If you knew how bad your kids would be before you had them. Would you be able to make better decisions in life if you knew the outcome of those decisions before you made them? What's the answer? Of course. If I knew the outcome of the decision, I'd always make the right decision. The reason we don't make the right decision is because we don't know how it's going to turn out. We're kind of guessing sometimes. But if I somehow knew what was going to happen before it happened, I could probably make better decisions. Show you how old I am right now. Who here remembers something? Phones before they had caller ID. Who remembers that? Okay, very good. Very good. Wow, a lot less than I expected. Okay. So back in the olden days, okay, the world was black and white, okay, for you youngins. We used to walk around, just black and white we'd see, okay? And in those days, phones were not in your pocket, they were on a wall. They were attached by things called cords and wires. And back in the day, I know this is really hard for some of you to grasp, and I'm not joking here, I'm dead serious. People would call you, and you had no idea who was on the other line. No idea. You couldn't see the number. There was no even little screen where you could even see it. So you would do something, you would say, hello, and then the other person would say, hello, this is so-and-so. And then if it's not a person you want to talk to, you'd say, and then this invention came called caller ID. You used to have to pay for it at the beginning when it first came out, if you remember. It had to be something you had to subscribe to. You had to subscribe to caller ID. Okay, this is a great world that we used to live in. Caller ID to me, when it came out, I couldn't believe it. This was another incarnation of God on this earth. This was God in my phone telling me who is calling me before I've even answered. This was incredible. Instantly, the day caller ID came out, I was able to make much better decisions about which phones to answer and which ones to not answer. Because I knew who was on the other side. God, you see today. God sees forever. You guess about the outcome of your prayer. God doesn't guess. God knows. Look at this verse from Hebrews chapter 4, verse 13. Nothing in all creation is hidden from God's sight. Everything is uncovered and laid bare before the eyes of Him to whom we must give account. God, we see what's in front of us only. God sees everything at the exact same time. Let me give you an example. I like this example. Okay, my business card example. Here, y'all can't see it, but this is my business card. Just take my word for it. On this business card says my name, Father Anthony Messeh. Let's just take just the Anthony part. Anthony begins with an A, N-T-H-O-N, and then has a Y at the end. So there's an A at There's an A at the beginning, and an N at a Y at the end. An A and a Y. Are the A and the Y next to each other? No, there's many letters in between. But when you look at this card, when I look at this card, I don't need to say Anthony. Anthony. I don't need to turn my head to read all of it. I can look from my perspective, and I can, with one look, see both the A and the Y simultaneously. Even though they are not next to each other, they're divided, but I can, from my big perspective, see them both at the same time. The O can't see them both, because the O is down there, can only see what's next to him on either side. But me, my perspective, I can see them both at the same side, at the same time. God is to time as you are to this business card. God looks at time from above. From his perspective, there's Adam and Eve, there's Moses, there's Jacob, there's George Washington, there's Christopher Columbus, okay, our man, okay. There's Martin Luther King, there's Father Anthony, there's Father Anthony's great-great-great-great-grandkids. All of them, shh, God sees them all right there. George Washington, Abraham, Lincoln, Moses, and Joshua, and great-great-great-grands. There. God doesn't need to turn his head. God sees it all from his perspective. So when God sometimes says no, it's because God sees the outcome. And God knows where that request is leading to. And can you trust that? Or your trust is in your own short-sighted, short-term little perspective. God has a bigger perspective. Number two, sometimes God not only has a bigger perspective, God has a better plan. God has a better plan. I know good, he knows better. I know good, he knows better. Again, how many of you, won't make you raise your hands because I already know the answer. How many of you have ever, one of two things, prayed and prayed and prayed and prayed and prayed for something and then gotten it and then it was the worst thing that ever happened to you? Or B, prayed and prayed and prayed and prayed that something would leave you and it didn't leave, and it was the best thing that ever happened to you. You know how many times that happens to us? All the time. All of us, if we're honest, can say we've been mistaken in our judgment. That we make dumb decisions all the time. No, God, take this away. This is the worst thing ever. Okay, thank you. No, God, please don't. Okay, that's fine. What we think is bad today, we later discover tomorrow was good. And what we think is good today, we later discover tomorrow was actually pretty bad. We are not as much of a good judge as we think we are. You know the whole expression, just to show you the expression, if you ever use the expression, a blessing in disguise. That means you ain't very sharp at seeing what's a blessing and not a blessing. So that's why we thank God that God has a better plan. I love this verse from Isaiah, chapter 55, verse 8 and 9. Again, this is a good one. I know I say every verse is a good one to memorize, but they are. Okay, this is a good one. For my thoughts are not your thoughts, nor your ways my ways, says the Lord. For as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts. You know what I love about this verse? God doesn't have a way. God has ways. God doesn't have a way. God has ways. Meaning, no matter what situation you're in, no matter how much you've messed up, you never paint God into a corner where God's like, well, you know, I wanted to bless you, but, you know, like you did something wrong in second grade and I just can't. Like you messed up. Sorry. Like God is never painted into a corner where he doesn't have options at all times. God says, I want to take you this way. And then we sin and we negate that way. God says, okay, I got another way to get you there. I'm God. My ways are not your ways. You have a way and it's good, but I got ways and they're better. I talked about Moses earlier. Forget about Moses. Daniel, Old Testament. Obeyed God, and the reward for him obeying God was he was thrown into a lion's den. Wait a minute, God. Here, I'm Daniel. How am I praying? Sometimes we over-spiritualize the characters in the Bible, okay, and we make it sound as if like they were excited to go into a lion's den. Like, yes, lion's den. I don't think that to be the case. I think Daniel, man of God, man of faith, man of prayer, the reason he was in there was because he prayed, started praying again. And I think his prayer probably went something, like, I'll tell you if it was me how I would pray. I would say, okay, God, I'm going to this lion den thing, okay? But I trust in you and I believe in you because you are almighty. So I have no doubt you're going to give me one of them little baby lions that I can knock out. Give me a little lion with like not many teeth, okay? So I can, you know what I mean? Or one of them dumb lions, okay? Like that I can take him. God says, okay, that way is good, but my way is better. I'm going to give you a big adult lion, ferocious. He's not going to lay one paw on you. He's going to say finger, okay? He's not going to lay one paw on you. Daniel had 3 buddies, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Very similar situation. They, because of their faithfulness to God, were thrown into a fiery furnace. Okay, God, here we go. We know how this is going to work. We're going to go in there, and you're going to invent fireproof material. The second we get in there. God says, nope, that's still coming in a few years. But how about I stick you in that fire, and I give you a cool breeze. And you know what? Because I like you, I'm going to stand next to you in there as well. See, your way is good, but God's way is better. Apply. You're single. You want to get married. You have a way. Your way is you get the nice clothes and you know what I mean, the skinny stuff and and the hair, and then like you put out the vibe at youth meeting, you know what I'm saying? Like you put that vibe out there, you know what I mean? Like you send in, you know what I mean? Letting the ladies know what's up, you know what I mean? And you're playing the game, you date around, you mess around, you disobey God, but you don't do anything really, really bad, because we make a distinction between bad and really, really bad. And then at some point in time, you'll meet a great girl and you'll do some bad stuff, and then you'll just marry and you'll have like a good marriage. That's good. But let me tell you better. Better is I'm actually going to make you miserable as a single person. You're going to be really lonely. And it's going to be the hardest time of your life. But in your loneliness, I will be with you. And you will learn how to be lonely with me and how to make me your best friend. And then, through no effort of your own, I will send the perfect girl into your life, and y'all will have the best marriage ever. Your way was good. You got a wife. My way is better. You got a wife and me. Good is God give me 4 kids. That's what I want. I want 4 kids. I'm infertile. I want 4 kids, God. That's the right way. God's way is actually, I'm not going to give you any kids. I'm going to put on your heart to adopt. And you're going to have not 4 kids. You're going to have the perfect kid just for you, that I have prepared before all of eternity. Your way is good. My way is better. You see, this issue gets down to the root of who do you trust? Do you put your trust in yourself and your own ideas and your own plan and your own way? Or do you realize that God's ways are so much higher than our ways? He even gives us, again, I'm a math person, okay? I like numbers. As high as the heavens are from the earth. Y'all know how high the heavens are from the earth? That's a big distance. And that's how God is saying, my ways are that much higher than your ways. But the problem is, you don't realize it. Problem is today, forgive me on this one, I'm going to go on a little bit of a rant on this one. We think we are experts in everything these days. And I tell you whose fault it is? The internet. You don't believe me. If you want to believe the internet's the Antichrist, you take what I'm about to say, you can run with it right here. Okay? I don't believe the internet is the Antichrist, but at times it might be. Okay? The internet has made us all think we know everything there is to know about everything. Because even if I don't know it, I just Google it and I'll figure it out. I know a doctor. Doctors here, y'all hate the internet. Okay? Because we patients, and I'm the first one who does it, we come to you and we tell you what the problem is. We've seen 3 episodes of Grey's Anatomy and we can cure cancer. It is dangerous when we apply this same thinking towards God. We know what's right, God. Now, I've been to Sunday school. I went to Sunday school till 5th grade. I know what I'm talking about. It is dangerous when we have the same attitude towards God. First, I said that God has a bigger perspective. I see today, he sees forever. Sometimes he doesn't give me what I want because he sees the bigger picture. Number two, sometimes we're seeing the same thing, the same end point, but I have a good plan, he has a better plan. And then the third, that God has a greater purpose. I want happy. He wants holy. And a lot of us, if we're honest, our problem with God, if I can be honest, you know why God is not answering your prayer? Because you're fighting against God in your prayer. Because God is trying to make you holy. You're trying everything in your power to make yourself happy. And those are two completely different goals. I'm not saying God doesn't want you happy. I, as a father, I want my kids to be happy. But there are greater purposes in life than they're just to be happy at all times. Pain-free. I have a greater purpose for them. And sometimes I will sacrifice their happiness for the sake of their well-being. And God is no different. He will sacrifice your happiness for the sake of your holiness, because your happiness only lasts for a short period of time, but your holiness will carry you into eternity and beyond. I spoke about this at the retreat, so for those who were there, and I'll just kind of reiterate the same thing, that you cannot find any great man or woman of God who didn't have to go through adversity to get there. You can't find one person in the Bible who became great without adversity. You can't find one great saint in our church's rich history. I don't even think more local level. Think of somebody that you admire in your life. Your father, your uncle, your grandfather, your mother, your sister. Think of somebody that you know and that you admire. And I guarantee you, that person at some point in time went through a difficult period of time where they resisted at first. And God said no. God did not answer their prayer. They said, God, get this away from me. And God said, no, I have a greater purpose, to make you something greater. And they are who they are today because of that period. St. Paul, our example here. St. Paul, as you all know, at one point in time, St. Paul, for those who don't know, was, other than Christ, greatest preacher of all time. All right, and St. Paul wrote half the New Testament, and most of the churches all over this world would say, at some point, direct their starting point back to St. Paul in some way, shape, or another. St. Paul went through a period in his life where he had, in his own words, a thorn in the flesh. Something that was debilitating. We don't know exactly what it was. We know it was debilitating. We know it was extremely painful. For the toughest man on the planet, St. Paul was, to talk about this in a painful way means it was really painful. And most importantly, it was hindering him from doing the mission that God asked him to do. It was inhibiting his ability to preach the gospel all over the earth. So what did St. Paul do? The Bible says that St. Paul prayed. And it says, 3 times I prayed that the Lord would take this from me. Now when you hear that expression, 3 times I prayed, don't think of it, it means 3 times the way you and I pray. Please God, bless my mom, bless my dad, please take away this bad thing, and please give me safety on my way to school today. Amen. That's one. That's not means pray 3 times. You know what pray 3 times means? It means 3 seasons of prayer. It means St. Paul said, like, for example, here comes Lent. Lent is coming around. I say, you know what St. Paul saying? You know what? I'm dedicating this Lent to this thorn in the flesh. And I'm going to pray, and I'm going to fast, and I'm going to dedicate all my resources, and I know God will heal, and I know God will, and I know God will. A season of life. And at the end of that season of life, God said, no. A year and a half later, St. Paul somehow, I can't take this anymore. I'm going to dedicate this season of life to prayer. And he dedicated the season, and he told everyone to pray for him. And he set the little notes up on the altar, everything like that. Like he did everything right. And God said, no. 3rd time, season, no. At the end of 3 seasons of prayer, God said, I appreciate those prayers. No, no, and no. And St. Paul's analysis of this is written to us in 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 17 and 18, where he says, our light affliction, which by the way is a funny sentence, our light affliction. His light affliction is more than all of us combined. Okay, what he if we faced 10% of what he faced, we would run like the wind. He says, our light affliction, which is but for a moment, is working for us a far more exceeding and eternal weight of glory. While we do not look at the things which are seen, but at the things which are not seen. For the things which are seen are temporary, but the things which are not seen are eternal. God wasn't trying to make St. Paul happy. God was trying to make St. Paul holy. And St. Paul was smart enough to realize that. And that's why his light affliction, which we already agreed is not a light affliction, worked out for him pretty good. And St. Paul, if you go ask him today, he'd tell you he wouldn't change a thing. Look, there's a verse in Isaiah chapter 46, verse 10, where Isaiah the prophet speaks on behalf of God, and God says through him, my purpose will stand, and I will do all that I please. Unfortunately for us, when we pray against God's purpose, you can fast, you can pray, you can believe, you can give in the money box, you can do whatever it is that you want. Man, if you are praying against God's will, not God's will, I want to get away from God's will. I'll talk about that later. That's tomorrow's session. If you are praying against God's purpose for your life, you pray all day and all night. God will never give it to you. I remember there was a season in my life. All right, I'm not going to sit here and say that I am anything special or anything great, but I share examples from my own life just because I always tell people you'd rather me share my story than stand up here and share your story, right? Like, you wouldn't like it if I said this person did this. So when I was in college, university, when I was in university, I wasn't very close to God for the first 2.5 years, 3 years of my college life. All right, I wasn't close to God. Like, I was always like in church. I would say I was in church, but the church wasn't in me. Like, I was in church physically, but I was just kind of going through the motions and whatever. So I went away to school, and once I went away to school, that was pretty much it. Like, I was kind of only doing it for my parents' sake when I was here, but once I went away to school, I was pretty much on my own. And I was a good kid. Obviously, I was a good kid, okay? But I wasn't so much into God, and I wasn't so much into, the church thing and like the holy thing, and it just wasn't for me. I had my friends. We weren't the worst people or the best people. Like, we were just average college students doing what average college students do. End of my third year, I started to get close to I really started, like, it began socially in church. Okay, then that started to get me closer to God, started to develop a relationship with God. My fourth year of college, okay, when I go back, by this time I had spent all summer back home and started to establish relationships with people back in church, and my social circle started to change. I was living in a house with 8 guys, or there was 8 of us, me and 7 other guys, and we had certain lifestyles. Okay, we lived a certain way. Again, not angels, but we're not the worst people in the world. We're just college kids. But my social circle started to change. I started hanging out with these church people a little bit more and make better decisions socially. I wasn't leaving this group as much as I was just trying to, when you play the game. You know what I mean? Like, you play the game here and you play the game here. And that works for a while, but at some point in time, the 2 boats go too far apart that you can't keep your 1 foot on each for so long. So you got to kind of make a decision. And around this point in time, I'm thinking to myself, you know what? I like this God way. Okay, I like this. The problem with the God way is it's really only on weekends when I would go home for church. And I wouldn't even go home every weekend. So like, if I didn't go home for a weekend, it might be like 2 weeks. And this is my social circle that I've known for 3 years. I said, I want to go this way. Right at that time, lo and behold, as will always happen, you make a decision to go this way, you better believe all the power of hell will be against you to try to make you go back. Some things happen in my personal life, okay, where, without getting into any too much detail, I went through a difficult period. And that was a lonely period for me, a very lonely period. And I'll be honest, I was tempted, as anyone would be tempted, when you're in this phase, and you're kind of doing things this way, and things aren't really going the way you wanted them to, and like you're starting to make the right decision, but life seems to be going this way, and then like these people aren't around, and I'm kind of lonely, but these guys are around, like I live with them. The temptation was to kind of go back this way. And I'd be honest, say, this was a struggle for me. I made the right decision. But it wasn't an easy decision. Most people in this situation, again, I'm not saying I'm great, I'm just sharing my own story. Most people in this situation would choose easy. Most people would choose happy. God was pushing for holy. And to this day, I am so thankful that God gave me the grace to make the right decision, because I got through that period. And I always say, if I had never been lonely, I'd never learned how to become friends with God. The best thing that ever happened to me was that lonely period where I learned how to be friends with God. I learned how to pray during that time. I learned how to read the Bible and find God in the Bible during that time. God never answered my prayer. But he's answering now. There are few things that will scare a preacher more than when I say God didn't answer my prayer and then Darth Vader's voice comes out of nowhere. God never answered my prayer. But I'm telling you, if I go back in time, I wouldn't change a thing. If I go back in time, I wouldn't change a thing. Are you ready to see that God has a bigger perspective? He sees things that you'll never see. That God has a better plan. He's got better ways, so much higher than the heavens and the earth are your ways. He's got a much greater purpose than you may have. You're thinking happy, he's thinking holy. You're thinking comfortable, he's thinking character. You're thinking safe, he's thinking saint. Are you willing to trust in that or not? Last thing before I let y'all go. Okay, last thing. And I'm just going to say these two things, and I'm not going to say anything more after that. I even when I prepared, I should end here, but I just can't leave you without this. Two things, I want you to go out with this. Trust in the giver, not in the gift. Put these three things, these are the three roots. I'm going to give you two things right now. Two tools. Put in your pocket. Put one in your left pocket, put one in your right pocket, and keep this with you as you go out. Two things to remember and remember and remember and remember and recite and remember. Hold on to these two things. You may not need them today. You will need them when God doesn't give you what you want. Just stick them in your pocket. Talk about them real brief. Number one, whenever God doesn't answer our prayer, it's always out of love. And number two, it's never without grace. Stick those in your pocket. No matter what God does, it's always out of love, and it's never without grace. It's always out of love, and it's never without grace. I'm telling this to my child. Even when daddy doesn't give you what you want, remember it's out of love. Even when daddy makes you take a medicine that you don't like, it'll always be with grace. He'll always give you something to compensate, to get you through that. Again, Sandra was a prophetess from God today, okay, because she set me up perfect for my talk. She mentioned Romans 8:28. Romans 8:28 is the most over-quoted and under-applied verse in the Scripture. We say it, we love it, we don't believe it. We don't act on it. Because if we did, our lives would look different. Because it says, and we know that all things work together for good to those who love God. Stop saying it. Stop telling your friends about it. Stop putting it on the mirror and writing it on the wall and put it in little cute little notes in your lunchbox. Stop putting it on Twitter and Facebook as your status. Stop it. Believe it. Stop writing it on paper. Start writing it in your heart. We know that all things work together for good to those who love God. So when I see the world falling apart around me, I am not guessing, hey, will this work out? Hey, will this work out? Hey, what's going to happen? Hey, how's it going to turn out? No. I know that all things work together for good to those who love God. So just because I don't see how it's going to work together, I know that all things work together for good to those who love God. I know that even if God gives bad in quotes, because it's not really bad, God doesn't give bad, he only gives good, but in my eyes it's bad, I know it's out of love. And just again, back to me, I give my kid medicine, he's crying, you don't say you're a bad dad, you say you love your dad. Love your son. Everything God does, he does out of love. And number two, it's always out of love, and it's never without grace. This verse, this is what St. Paul said when he talked about his thorn in the flesh. Concerning this thing, 2 Corinthians 12:8, concerning this thing, I pleaded with the Lord 3 times. That's why I said it wasn't a good night prayer. It was pleaded with the Lord for 3 seasons that it might depart from me. And he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you. For my strength is made perfect in weakness. Can you believe that? I know you can accept it intellectually, but can you accept it in your heart? Can you go to work tomorrow morning with this as your foundation? That yes, my life is not perfect. And yes, my life, I do not have everything I want. But I will walk tall, and I will walk strong, and I will get up in the morning, and I will praise God, and I will come to church in the evening, and I will serve God. Why? Not because he gives me everything I want, but because he gives me what I need. And he has a bigger perspective, he has a better plan, he has a greater purpose. And even though I don't get what I want, I know what I get is out of his love, and it's accompanied by a side of grace on the side. That God does it out of his love, and he gives me something to compensate for it. What's that compensation? I don't know. But I guarantee you, God never, ever, ever gives a thorn without grace. God gives a thorn, God gives grace. God gives a bigger thorn, God gives a bigger grace. The grace is bigger in proportion to the bigness of the thorn. You can never, never, never have any challenge or trial in life that is bigger than the grace that God will give with it. And you say, Father Anthony, but I don't see it. I don't see it. I don't see God's love. I don't see God's grace. The point isn't to see it. The point is to believe it. Remember what Jesus said to Thomas after he rose from the dead? What did Jesus say to Thomas? They told Thomas, Jesus is risen. Thomas said, I'm not going to believe it until I see it. And Jesus said, okay, come here, man, touch. Now you believe? Thomas said, yes, I believe. And he said to him what? In John chapter 20. He said, Thomas, now that you have seen, you believe. Blessed are those who, what? Who have not seen, yet believed. Don't tell me that I don't believe in God's love because I haven't seen it. Don't tell me I don't believe that God is with me because I don't see it. That's the whole point of faith. If you've seen it, it wouldn't be faith. It would be seeing stuff. I'm done. Let me just tell you this. I'm done. Let me tell you this, okay? As a priest, I can honestly say, I don't have a God perspective, but I have a slightly bigger perspective than maybe the average person sitting right here. As a priest, I can say, I don't know one person, I don't know one family that doesn't have something that they're praying about that they haven't gotten. I don't know one person. You think it's just you. And you think you're the only one. Or you think that yours is worse than everyone else's. That's human nature. I think mine is worse than yours. I'd trade with you. You'd trade with me. That's life. The goal is not to get everything we want from God. The goal is to put our trust in the giver, not in the gift. And if you wanted to look for some, like you heard nothing that I said tonight, and you want to walk out of here with just like one verse, easy to memorize, one phrase, like you heard nothing that I said, like you just woke up. You've been checking your Facebook this whole time, and you have like 6 likes on your picture, which is fantastic. Now you're ready to pay attention to what I'm about to say. You walk out of here with Psalm 4:5. Psalm 4:5, which is such a dear verse to me, near and dear to my heart, that I know y'all can't see this. I don't carry a wallet, I carry a money clip, okay? And on my money clip, it says Psalm 4:5. Someone gave this to me because I told him this verse in confession 60,000 times. So he finally said, you're going to buy me this little money clip. And I keep it next to my heart. Psalm 4:5 says this. Make life real simple for you. What I need to walk out of here and do, I need to offer right sacrifices and trust in the Lord. Offer right sacrifices and trust in the Lord. Offer right sacrifices and trust in the Lord. Offer right sacrifices means do your job. That's what I said in the beginning. Ask in faith. Forgive your enemy. Love your neighbor. Strive for purity. Fight against sin. Pray in faith. Like, do all the things you're supposed to do. Do your job. Offer right sacrifices. But then once you have offered right sacrifices and done your job, then it's time for you to trust in the Lord. That you did your part, now it's time for him to do his part. You've done your part. If you haven't done your part, go do your part. Then after you've done your part, you come back and say, God, I trust in you. I know that you got a bigger perspective. You got a better plan. You got a greater purpose. And anything you give me, I will trust in you. I will not trust in the gift. I will trust in you. Because that is the kind of Father and God that you are. Glory be to God forever.